Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. I am going to be sharing some reading recommendations for Pride Month, but of course these books can be enjoyed throughout the year, not exclusively in the month of June. I am sitting outside, and you may be wondering, if you live in the Northern Hemisphere and it's almost summer, why are you wearing long sleeves? Well, that is because we live in a very wooded area and the mosquitoes like to come out this time of day. So I'm doing my best to prevent too many mosquito bites. I also, just off screen here, have a little citronella stick burning. So if you occasionally see haze or smoke, don't be alarmed, it's just my citronella incense stick. I have 6 books that I'm going to be recommending, so without further ado, let's just dive right into the video. So the first book that I'm going to be recommending is the book that I'm currently reading for my book club over on Patreon, and that is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I have been really enjoying this book. I've been listening to the audiobook of this particular novel because I drive to and from work now, and it's just the most accessible way for me to read this book at this point. And I really love the person who is narrating the story. He has a really good reading voice, and he does occasionally do slightly different voices for certain characters, but it's not over the top. It doesn't pull me out of the story. And there's something about an audiobook that feels even more immersive at times, especially if you have a really good voice actor. I think about 25% through The Song of Achilles at this point, and I have been enjoying every minute of it, and it is one that I highly recommend. This novel is told as a first-person narrative from the perspective of Patroclus, and he is the companion to young Achilles. At least that's where I am in the story at this point. And this story is a retelling of the Greek mythology around Achilles, and it focuses on the relationship between Patroclus and Achilles. And it is so sweet. I am really enjoying it so much. I love how Madeline Miller retells these types of stories that we may have read excerpts from the Iliad or the Odyssey when we were in school, and she just breathes so much humanness and relatability into the characters. If you've not read anything by Madeline Miller, I definitely recommend checking out The Song of Achilles. The next book that I recommend is After Sappho by Selby Wynne Schwartz. I have notes off to the side if you see me glancing off from time to time. I read this book last year as part of the reading calendar that my wife Cynthia made for me, and it is a fiction. And it was one that when I read the synopsis prior to starting the book, I had envisioned a very different type of book. And I think because I had a different set of expectations and the book was quite different than those expectations, I only rated it a 3-star book. And as time has gone on, I think I rated it too harshly. I think I was very much rating it from, oh, well, that wasn't what I thought it was going to be, so it was just okay. But it really is so well written, very creative, and it follows a series of characters who, many of which are based upon real life people from all across history. And it sort of shows like the interconnectedness between those characters through things that happened in their life, but then also people that they studied or admired from the past, and they're all linked back to Sappho and the story really jumps between perspectives quite a bit. And so if you like a story to be told in a linear fashion, this isn't exactly that type of book. In some ways it does go in a linear fashion, but it's traveling through history. And so it's very different from your typical like beginning, middle, end type of fictional story. But I think if I read the book now, knowing that it wasn't going to be a linear plot, I probably would rate it much higher, because the writing is really, really good, and the creativity around this story is just really brilliant. So I am going to recommend After Sappho because it's just stuck with me, and I continue to think about it since beginning of last year. So, and of course, you know, it's not one that I think everybody would love, but I do believe that, you know, some readers out there would find a lot of value from the story and just find it a really interesting type of storytelling. The next book on this reading recommendations list is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. I have talked about this book in previous videos, and I'm going to recommend it again because it has become one of my absolute favorites. Definitely from what I read last year, and probably one of my favorite books that I've ever read. It is told from two characters' perspectives, a lesbian married couple. One is a scientist who goes on a submarine deep sea mission, and the mission goes terribly wrong. And the other character is the wife, who is at home and doesn't know what has happened to her spouse. It is a hauntingly beautiful story, and one that I just love the more as time goes on. It's one that I don't want to go into too many specifics as to why I love it, because then I will end up spoiling some of the bits of the story, but you just have to read it. Our Wives Under the Sea is one that will definitely stick in your mind. The next book I'm going to be recommending is one that I read in college, and that is Orlando by Virginia Woolf. This is probably Virginia Woolf's most well-known, certainly one of the most well-known novels by her. I think a lot of people also read Mrs. Dalloway, but if you haven't read Orlando, this is such a cool book, and it was so ahead of its time. I'm trying to remember when this was originally published, 1928. So this book follows the character Orlando, who begins the story as a man in, gosh, it's like during Queen Elizabeth's reign, Queen Elizabeth I. Not exactly halfway through the book, but sort of the midpoint of the plot. Orlando undergoes this transformation and wakes up as a woman, and the story ends up going into the 1920s. So obviously this has a lot of speculative elements, because a single person could certainly not live from the Elizabethan era all the way to the 1920s, but it's such a cleverly crafted book. As I said, it was way ahead of its time. And this was also written by Virginia Woolf as a sort of love story between her and Vita Sackville West. I definitely am due for a reread on this one. And I also realized I have not seen any film adaptations of this story, so perhaps I'm also due to see the lovely Tilda Swinton portraying Orlando. The next book on this list is The Confessions of Franny Langton by Sarah Collins. I read this book last year, also as part of my reading calendar, and it was really good. I will say the main characters are sort of like main lesbian romance, If you are familiar with the song Lady Gaga's Bad Romance, I feel like that would be the theme song of the main character's relationship. They are so messy, they are so toxic. There is such a power imbalance between their stations in life. This story follows the titular character Franny, and it's told from her perspective. She is a young black woman who was born and raised in Jamaica on a plantation owned by Mr. Langton. And the story starts out in the present, sort of towards the end of where the book eventually finishes. And she's on trial for the murder of her mistress. And we end up going back in time to see her childhood, how she grew up, and how she eventually came to live in London and to live with the family that she was sold to, and the mistress that she ended up serving, falling in love with, having a very messy romance with, and all of the drama that ensues. So it is one that I really love historical fiction, and so that aspect of the story was really intriguing to me. But I think what has stuck with me about this book is the commentary on slavery and how there would have been situations like this in history. Women who were born and raised on a plantation, who were horribly misused and abused, and who were sold. Ugh, yeah, it's not a light read, and I will say that the main character's relationship is not one that is a good example of like, yes, like this is something one would strive for in a relationship, because as I mentioned, there is such a power imbalance between the two characters. So yeah, even though Franny does love her mistress and falls in love with her, there's just this imbalance because she is owned, and the mistress is a very spoiled person and is very accustomed to getting her way. And yeah, it's really interesting. Definitely look up some content warnings if you're really sensitive to tough topics that occur in this book. But I do think it's one that is really important. It's unapologetic. I think that's the thing that I really, really liked about it. It was just, this is the story. It's not nice. It's not wrapped up in this nice little package that makes it easy to swallow, but it's also not going for like shock value. It's just really raw. So check out The Confessions of Franny Langton, and yeah, just double check on content warnings if you're a really sensitive reader. And the last book on this reading recommendations list is another one that I've talked about at length on this channel, and that is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I love this book. It was my favorite read of 2023. I recommend it to so many people all the time for multiple reasons. And I love this book for the characters, especially Evelyn, and the characters that are such a huge part of her life. Again, I won't go into too many details, but the title is only one aspect of the story, and I love the representation of LGBTQ plus characters in this book. I think it was done with such nuance and respect, and because Evelyn is a famous actress and she was at the peak of her fame during a time when homosexuality was illegal, you really get to see a lot of insight into someone like her who wanted to love who she wanted to love, but had to be so incredibly careful and very strategic, and the strain that that has on her own heart as well as the people within her life. So it's beautifully told. Definitely have a box of tissues with you. The audiobook was really good with this one as well. I really enjoyed the voice actor who narrated it. And yeah, definitely check out The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I will not stop talking about it. And those are the 6 books that I recommend reading for Pride Month and all throughout the year. These books and stories like them are ones that are really special to me as someone who is in the LGBTQ plus community. And please just remember that Pride Month isn't always about celebration and rainbows and unicorns and all of those fun celebratory things. It very much is that, but it's also a time to remember that as we've come so far with, having rights and being able to live as ourselves, there's still so much work to be done, and there are still so many people within our community who do not have the ability to be out safely. And I want to just acknowledge that and to say that if you live somewhere that you can't be your authentic self without fear of being hurt or bullied, my heart really goes out to you, and just know that you are not alone and this is a safe space for you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being you, and you have nothing to be ashamed of. You are loved exactly as you are. I would also like to give a special thank you to my patrons who support my channel here on YouTube and my other creative endeavors across the internet. Without your support, I wouldn't be able to make fun videos like this, so thank you so very much. If you're interested in checking out my Patreon, I will link that information down in the description box. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this reading recommendations list. If you have any books that you would like to recommend for Pride Month and beyond, please leave them in the comments section below. I hope that you have a happy Pride Month. Be kind to yourselves, be kind to others, and until next time, I hope you have a lovely and cozy book to curl up with. Bye-bye.